It was a hot, humid day in late August. I'm sweating in the navy suit my grandma helped me buy with her discount from Macy's. This is the corporate office park here. Let's see. I look in the back of my Honda Civic and I see a small desk lamp and my stuffed bear, Pookie. They're remnants from my recent trip across the Hudson River from New York to the foreign land of New Jersey. I'm about to start my first day at work as a grown-up person at a high-tech company, the biggest high-tech company in the world. Now, I know you're probably thinking Google, Tesla, Facebook, something, but it's 1993, and AT&T is running these amazing ads about the future of technology. They say we're gonna be able to fax from a beach. I'm super excited to go start working there. So I leave Pookie in the car, and I head into this big green glass building in Bedminster, New Jersey. There's the address for you. And I head inside, I meet my new boss, and he assigns me a mentor. They set me up in a cubicle and they have me watching these mind-numbing onboarding videos for hours. Then mercifully, my mentor comes in and he says, hey, there's gonna be a big company meeting right after lunch, some big company announcement. A meeting, my first meeting. I'm still excited. I think, wait, we're gonna talk about faxing from the beach. But I head into the conference room and all my new colleagues are in there, very exciting. And I kind of size them up, and there's a standing room only in there. There's actually people sitting on the floor. But somebody opens up a seat for me because in my very tight, brand new suit, there's no way I can sit on the floor. So I sit down and then a hush falls over the room. And the big cheese walks in. And I know him because I saw him from the onboarding videos that I was watching, the mind-numbing ones. He walks up to the front, he taps them like 3 times. He clears his throat. And then he says, there will be a reduction in force. What does that mean? I look at my mentor, puzzled. He says, layoffs. Layoffs? This is my first day as a grown-up in my new life. I just graduated college and you're announcing layoffs. And I look at my mentor worried, like, what's gonna happen? Who's gonna provide a home for my lamp and Pookie? And my mentor says to me, don't worry, they don't pay you enough to lay you off. Turns out he's right on both things. They didn't pay me enough and they didn't lay me off. But what I noticed was for the next several weeks, all anyone talked about was where they're gonna work. Will they be laid off? Will they be laid off? What's their package? What package will they be offered? Who's taking what package? Who's gonna do the work? That was all we did. There was no more talk about faxing from the beach. There was no more talk about innovation. This was like all business was now about this whole layoff happening. That was the first time my soul was crushed at work, my first day as an adult. And then it happened so many times after that. It happened when I was asked to rank my team against each other in order and against other teams. It happened again when I was asked to work on things that I knew weren't good for the business. It happened when I was witnessing unethical decisions being made and ridiculed for calling them out. And it just happened every day when it was so hard to get work done just because of all the red tape that we had to go through. Now, I'm sure, I'm looking around the room here, I'm sure that you've all had soul-crushing moments too. And I'm sure you're thinking about them all right now. So I'm gonna give you a chance to unload those soul-crushing moments. So let's see if this is gonna work. Think about your soul-crushing moment. Here we go. I'm gonna give you a Slido code, I think. Yeah, there we go. So see if you can get that Slido, either do the QR code or enter in the code. And go ahead and enter your soul-crushing moment. And I'm gonna give you a chance to let that go. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Oh, I know some of you didn't have a soul-crushing moment. But that's okay, we have enough in this room for all of us. Oh, a lot of people had layoffs. Sometimes it's just as much as like your idea got shut down. Oh, seeing a bully promoted. Oh, well, I wasn't the only one laid off on my first day, I guess. Oh, laid off after a vacation. Burnout. Pinched in the rear. Ranking employees. Yeah, ranking is a soul-crushing thing, isn't it? Whether you're the one being ranked or the one doing the ranking. Okay. My boss yelled at me for 30 minutes because you disagreed. Being lied to. Denied promotion. Yeah, passed over for promotion. That's a terrible one. Okay. So we've all had a lot of soul-crushing in this room, and we all know it's not good for business. Okay, there's a lot in here. I'm gonna, on the count of 3, we're gonna bundle up all of those and then we're gonna let them go. Ready? You can count with me. 1, 2, 3. Come on, little PowerPoint, let them go like Elsa. There they go. We can release all those soul-crushing moments and we're gonna talk about how to be soulful now that we let that all go. So we know that soul-crushing is bad for business. We know it feels like crap. And it's not good for anybody, so why do we keep doing it? Why do organizations seem to be designed to be soul-crushing and to kind of manipulate our need for being soulful to get some performance and productivity out of us? So that's why I believe that businesses thrive when they use a soulful lens, and we really need to work on that soulfulness. And I do also think, and I'll get to this, that Agilists are the perfect people to do this. So what are we gonna talk about today? First, I think I need to give you some definition and lay some foundation about what is soulful, what's a soulful organization, what am I even talking about? And then we'll get to what does it mean for us as Agilists? Where do we fit? Where do we play in this soulful space? Sound good? Okay. So when you saw on the program that I was gonna be here talking about soulful organizations and the soul of Agile, did you think I was gonna come out here looking like a hippie? Wearing a caftan? Burning incense? A little bit. He says, yeah, a little bit I did. Well, that's not me. And no shade on you if that is you, burn your incense. But I believe that soulfulness and soulful workplaces are a very practical matter. It is about business, and it is about us as humans. So what do I mean by soul? People ask me, like, what do you mean by soul? Are we gonna be all spiritual? Are we gonna be burning incense? Well, I think soulfulness in the workplace it means that you can bring your whole self to work that has meaning for you, with people that you're connected with. And that's soulfulness. And again, good for business. I will also add, I hear a lot of folks talk about happiness in the workplace, and I'm not against happiness. I'm all for happiness, actually. But we have more than one emotion. We're not happy all the time. And soulfulness means that when there is something that happens that may be negative, or we're sad, or we're angry, that we have room to honor that emotion. We have room for all emotions in the workplace. It's not just happy. It's not that forced happiness. So that's why I say soulful instead of happy. The other thing I want to point out is that there is a connection, and I've sort of alluded to this already. There's a connection between the practical and the soulful. And that connection is this exact space where Agilists play. So that means that for every practical Agile practice that we have, or business practice we have, there's a soulful aspect. There's a soulful reason. And for every soulful thing that we do, there should be a practical implementation. So connecting those two things, you probably already do it, but we want to be much more explicit about it. Okay, so a little groundwork here. There are 3 conditions for soulfulness that I would like to propose to you. Now, there's other folks out there talking about, Dan Pink talks about the 3 motivational factors, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Those are really high-level things that if you've taken care of your basic human needs, sure, purpose is wonderful. I don't believe that we've taken care of the basic human needs for the soul in the workplace. So I believe that the basic needs that we need to take care of first, and I'll get to the first one in a second, but first I just want you to think about, how does it feel when someone has power over you and they can like flick you like a bud like this guy? It doesn't feel good. It feels like crap, really. And so that is the autonomy piece, right? That's the having some power, empowerment. But what is it really? What it really is underneath that when someone has power over you is lack of dignity. If we don't have human dignity in the workplace, there's no way you can have autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? You need to have like that basic human dignity, that self-worth. And like I mentioned before, organizations are sort of designed to kind of play against your self-worth, right? The ranking, the performance reviews. It's all about like, am I worthy? Please say I'm worthy. And maybe we're not worthy. Maybe there's a layoff that robs you of your human dignity. So dignity is the number one thing that we need in a workplace to be soulful. Number two is creativity. Now, sometimes people think creativity means that you're an artist or you're a musician. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not the graphics team, although if it is, that's cool too. Creativity is the act of creating something, feeling like we actually feel good about what we've made. So I put a quote here from Rick Rubin, but also I was reading the other day, just as I was doing these slides, from the corporate rebels, who say that the creativity is a human need up there with food and shelter. It's important. So feeling like we've created something. Now, PowerPoint is creating something, but sometimes your PowerPoint's creative and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you just dump the data in there and send it off. And sometimes you take it that extra step to say, how can I make this data understandable? And then that, you know what happens, right? Because you've all done it. You have that slide that gets passed around to everybody because it's so good. That's a creative slide. So think about how you can like take that one extra step. It's a little bit like mastery and make your work creative. And it's about having that time too. So I'm gonna give you another Insta poll here. And I want you to think about, well, how does that feel? Like from a human perspective, from a soulful perspective, how does it feel when you're being creative at work? Like not good, bad, but like how does it feel in your body? How does it feel for you emotionally? Here, I'll give you a Slido. Okay, how does it feel when you're being creative? Energetic, yeah, it gives you energy. It feeds your soul. Empowering, right? We talk about autonomy and empowerment. Well, we can get it from creativity. Fulfilling, energizing, and a lot of E words up here. Freeing, awesome. Yeah, excited, happy, worthy, zen. You get into that flow state, right? When you're doing something creative. Excellent. Okay, what else? Rocket fueled, accomplished. Yeah, so there is room for creativity in our work, in all of our work. No matter what your work is, you have room to be creative. You have room to take it to that next level. Do something fun. Oops, I'm doing this again. All right, so number 3 on the conditions for soulfulness in the workplace, connection. Human connection is so important because our organizations, and Bob Galen just said this in his session, is human connection. Organizations are human systems. And human systems run on connection. That is the fuel. So we need to attend to that. And even introverts, right? Even introverts need connection. Maybe a little bit less than others, but everybody needs connection. And don't make me say it. Don't make me say it. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? It's the number one value in the Agile Manifesto. Connection is right up there, that's the top. And I just want to share also, we don't spend as much time in our villages as we used to. Work is the new village. We spend a lot of time with our work people. I know we're supposed to be professional, they're not your friends, but they are your friends, right? You're spending a lot of time with these people. Connection is important. So make connections and attend to those connections with those you work with. Okay, so just to recap, the 3 conditions for soulful organizations: dignity, creativity, and connection. Those are the 3 things. And we have those all in Agile, right? We help with those. But we'll put more of a finer point on that in a second. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is soulful language. I'm very interested in language and linguistics because it really shapes how we think. So if you think about, it shapes your biases, it shows your biases, it shapes how we think, it shapes our worldview. And I put this quote in from Braining Sweetgrass, where she talks about the English language is so heavily noun that she kind of hypothesizes, well, maybe that's why we're such a culture obsessed with objects, right? And where we objectify things. Maybe she's right, maybe she's not. But kind of interesting how different languages shape culture different ways. And then the question is, of course, How is corporate language shaping that soulfulness in corporations? And Agilists are so good at bringing in language. Maybe we can bring in some soulful language. The other thing to think about here is bridging. So you might hear me talking about soulfulness and being like, thinking in your head, there's no way I can say soul at my workplace. No way I'll get fired. You don't have to say soulfulness. You can maybe say, use some of the words that are there now, employee engagement, and kind of tack onto that. Use that as a bridge to get to some more soulful language. And I'll give you some examples in a second. But just, you make sure that you're attaching and anchoring with the words that are being used, and just maybe add to it. Like maybe soulful employee engagement, or maybe some well-being. Well-being is a nice word. So you can tack on to what's there. Let's see. So one of the frameworks I really love for language is living systems. Because everyone loves a living system. The fish, they're so colorful. Everyone likes it. As soon as you talk about it, they're like, ooh, living systems. So using living systems language is so useful in becoming more soulful. So if you think for a second, close your eyes if you like. How does it feel for you when I say, I want this team to flourish and thrive? How does that feel? And then how does it feel when I say, I want this team to succeed and win and achieve great things? Darn, that doesn't feel as good. That feels like a lot of pressure to me. Whereas when I say thrive and flourish, it feels like, oh, it's very inspiring and we can grow, and it feels like very freeing. So some of those living systems words are so much more inspiring. And even when things are bad, we can say, well, we're facing some congestion in our workflow versus there's a blocker, right? Blocker is not so fun. It seems like impenetrable, but congestion can be cleared, right? We can blow the system's nose, right? We can clear it out. And I want you to think too, so businesses use a lot of sports metaphors, a lot of war metaphors, and a lot of machine metaphors. And it doesn't have to be zero. I'm not saying we go to zero on these things, but when you think about a living system versus a machine or a factory, a machine and a factory is designed to do exactly what you designed it to do. Like it will do ideally, what you designed it for. A living system, a tree, when you grow, can grow and adapt beyond what the designer imagined for it. So it does give you that freeing openness. Okay, your turn. So at your tables, really quick, this is gonna be the quickest little breakout you ever had. Think about some soulless term being used in your workplace and how you might adapt it to incorporate some more soulful terminology. There's just one condition here, not resources. We already know about resources. We don't talk about resources. Find something else, and then go ahead, like as a team, as a table, enter into Slido your top soulless word that you're gonna turn into a soulful term. And I'm only gonna give you a couple minutes for this. So, 2-3 minutes, that's it, and then we'll get back together. Teammates, opportunities, marching orders. Marching orders is soulless if I ever heard anything soulless before. Profit versus healthy, flourishing. Okay, not enough bandwidth. Flow is restricted. Very good, excellent. So I just wanted to comment on one of these. We'll do some more of this fun stuff later with your tables. Somebody put up here, use the words instead of the acronyms. Whenever I see that, I just think, are you that busy that you don't have time to say the word? That is busy. All right, good, thank you for that. And just a couple that I had for you, which you may have come up with at your tables. We talked about machine versus like ecosystem or biome. Resources is the ever popular. Eliminate versus shed. Like shedding is so nice, or releasing. We released all those soul-crushing moments earlier. We talked about achieve versus thrive and flourish. Launch, and we talked about bring to life. Plan and execute. Maybe nicer if we said plan, sow, cultivate. Those are nice words, nice living systems words. Okay, good. So once we've got the language in place and we have the 3 conditions for soulfulness, let me give you some framework here on how a soulful organization looks. So we've got the soulful leader, the soulful team, and then ultimately our whole organization can be soulful. Wouldn't that be amazing? I'll break down each of these for you and we'll talk about how we as Agilists can affect them. I just want to make a note too, if anyone is familiar with my current work or any of my other work, I did talk about the me, the we, and the system a lot, and it aligns pretty nicely to the soulful leader, the soulful team, and the soulful organization. So there's a lot of good parallels there. In other words, I'm reusing some of my stuff. All right, the soulful leader. The leader is the person that's planting and sowing all of that soulfulness in the organization and creating those conditions. And a lot of you probably coach leaders or are leaders, so this is important for you. Okay, so if anyone remembers in the 70s, there were these ads about give a hoot, don't pollute. Does anyone remember? Is this just a New York thing? Okay, yeah, see, okay, we're the same age. So that's the thing to think about when you're a leader. The first thing is that self-awareness. How are you showing up? Because if you're showing up with all your baggage and you're polluting all those waters around you so that everyone is afraid or has to change themselves for what you want, that's not good, right? I mean, were you ever in a meeting where somebody walks in and you can feel the tension immediately because that leader walks in and everybody tenses up? Yeah, do you know that guy, that girl? Did you ever think that that person was you? She says yes. Well, I found out that it was me one time. I was working at a tech startup and my official title was Chief Product Officer, something like that. But my unofficial title was Queen of GSD. Does anyone know GSD? Getting shit done. That was my job. And I thought I was really knocking it out of the park until I overheard some employees talking one day, and they said, one says to the other, you hear that sound? When the elevator dings and you hear the click of those high heels on the marble floor, we turn down the music and act serious. Means Jardena's here. What? Me? I was fun, wasn't I? But I wasn't fun. I was young, and I wanted to be taken seriously, and I wanted to get shit done. And I was ruining everyone's creativity, everyone's productivity, and my ego got in the way of business, right? We weren't getting shit done because I wanted to be taken seriously. So it can be you, right? It's not always somebody else. So soulful leaders are accountable for a few things. Creating those conditions for soulfulness, that is a leader's job. Those 3 conditions we talked about, leaders need to attend to those. And look for ways where they might be cracked. Second thing is opening up new possibilities. So soulfulness doesn't mean that we're sitting around singing Kumbaya all day, because we are pushing, right? We are pushing for the next possible thing. So where people think things aren't possible, leaders are creating conditions for those things to be possible. So we're still doing that. And lest anyone forget, we still need to drive business results and point the direction. I think that with servant leadership and soulful leadership, sometimes we forget that we're still leading. The word leadership is still in there. So we are still pointing the direction. Now we have at Rosetta, we have a few assessments for assessing, hate the word assessment, please give me a better word, but I don't have one yet. I don't have a living systems word for assessment. For how do we know, what are the capabilities of a soulful leader? And we have a lot, but here's the top few here are self-awareness, which we just talked about. I was clearly not self-aware in the prior story. Emotional intelligence, I was also missing that. Which really just means that you're using emotion as a piece of data, not that you don't have emotion, right? It doesn't mean that a soulful leader has no emotion. No ego, low ego, which again, in story, had ego. And really the antidote for the ego problem is curiosity. Lean into that curiosity when you feel like your importance might be getting in the way. And then setting clear direction. Don't forget, we're still a leader. So those are the conditions for soulful leaders. Now let's talk about you as Agilists. How do Agilists help support soulful leadership? Well, the first thing, and I've heard it several times today in the sessions, is modeling that behavior that we're talking about, modeling that soulful behavior as an Agilist. And what does that mean? Well, it's supporting and uncovering the soulful leadership in others. But it is, Bob had a slide about what's hurting us. Where's Bob? What's hurting us as Agilists. And it was like, yeah, it was like that ignorance, that arrogance, that, I come in and you don't get it. That's not very soulful. So going in with just that curiosity of like, where is the soulfulness and how can I uncover it? Versus the, you don't get it and you're not worthy of my wisdom, right? Not so soulful. So that helping leaders, giving that kind feedback that we all do as coaches. And then the last one here is leaning into the Agile practices for support. So I talked about the practical and the soulful connection. All the Agile practices have a soulful purpose. And I'll tell you a story about Kanban. I was working with an organization and this one woman, Francine was like so overburdened and her boss asked me, can you help Francine get more work done? Because she's not getting a lot of work done, her and her very small team. So I got Francine, you're gonna love this, in a room with her boss's boss, and her boss's boss's boss. So I've got 4 levels of them sitting in a room. The bosses were all named Mike or Dave or something. They all had the same name. And so we sat in a room and they were like, how are you gonna help Francine get more work done? And I was like, well, let's, do a simple Kanban board here. And Francine, why don't we start putting some stickies for the big chunks of work. These are not tasks. Big chunks of work that you're working on. Well, she's got like 50 programs and they're all, of course, in the doing column. And who can even look at 50 things in a day or in a week? Can she even look at 50 programs? So then, of course, Mike, and Mike were all like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. We can deprioritize this. We can offload this. Left her with 10 things. Perfect. That Agile practice of Kanban board and prioritization, Francine looked like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Like you could physically see, she walked into the meeting like all crunched up. She walked out of the meeting like, okay, I feel like I can do my job now. That's the soulful part. And the practical part is work started getting done, right? They got business results. So connecting those practices and helping the leaders see through what we do with visibility of work and transparency, helping them see like, this is where it's soul crushing. Here it's visible for you. Those practices really help us, but you have to use them that way. Right? If we're not using them that way, they're not helping us that way. So back to soulful leadership. The key of soulful leadership is how you show up matters. My friend Gage says this. And if you don't know how you're showing up, you really don't know what your impact is. The first step is really understanding and seeing yourself, knowing your impact. All right, so that was soulful leaders. Now let's talk about the soulful team. I bet a lot of you work with teams, whether it's a leadership team, an executive team, a development team, whoever it is, it's probably a team. And that is the core. That is the pure embodiment of soulfulness in an organization, right? That's where it lives. That's where all that interaction is happening. Soulful, okay, an embodiment, right? We already said that. But this is really where we can help as Agilists, where teams are working together. How are they connecting? So you're probably doing a lot of that collaboration with the teams, but one thing to think about is, where's the pain? Where's the pain in a team that we're trying to layer on a bunch of processes on top of it, but they're in pain? So I'll tell you a story about a team I worked with. I went into this organization and I had, they set me up like they set up every other consultant. You go in a room, you do some interviews, do some assessments, meet with some people. That's what we always do, right? So I sat in this little conference room that they set me up in, and people came in, and I did the little interviews like, how's prioritization here? How's things? What could be better? That kind of stuff. But people weren't opening up. They were all clammed up. They weren't sharing like they normally do. I was like, I don't know what's going on with the culture here. Well, I found out later that a few months before, that same conference room had been sat in by a consultant, much like myself, interviewed people about their jobs, and then laid them off. So they didn't want to come in to talk to me. And there was a ton of pain left over from that had gone completely unaddressed, right? Because it's like, you all still have your jobs, let's move on. So I had to pivot, of course, and have some kind of session with them to sort of process that, what had happened that had been swept under the rug. But that pain was ignored. And you can't layer this stuff on top of all that pain. So addressing that pain in teams, I don't know if we have an Agile practice for that. Some of you do it intuitively, but that's something to really think about is like, where is there pain that's blocking us from moving forward? We hurt. And the key to that is just being willing to sit squarely in the face of that pain and look it in the eye, even if you don't have a solution for it. Sometimes it's just about venting it. All right. So soulful team capabilities. You already do a lot of this. Healing the pain, number one. Conflict resolution. So we do a lot of conflict resolution, teaching the teams how to resolve conflict. Focus. Boy, there is nothing less soulful than having to scatter your thoughts all around and not being able to focus on something, right? That's why prioritization is such a soulful practice, I think. So focus is something that's soulful. Connection, social safety. So it's that I actually do have a connection with the people in the group, not just, people say psychological safety, but it's not so much intellectual as it is social. I want to know I'm not going to be kicked out if I say something you don't like. And then, of course, we want intellectual challenge, right? So again, it's not all, I said kumbaya before, but it is that we can challenge each other and bring each other to new levels of achievement. I'm going to say achievement, of flourishing. And so teams actually lift each other up. That's soulful. It's not that we just only make each other feel good. All right. So that's a soulful team. How do Agilists do this? Well, we already do this stuff. Attending to the team's soul is a key, though. Right? Our practices are designed to do this. Tend to the team's soul. You know, we talked about the healing the pain. Solving the problem that needs to be solved, not just the one that we know how to solve, not just the one that's baked into Scrum, but other problems that arise that maybe we don't know how to solve. And then helping the team use Agile practices in a soulful way. And then remember, I'm going to say it again, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It's right in there. It's right in the manifesto. Okay, so we talked about leaders. We talked about teams. Now let's talk about the soulful organization. Like, how do we make the whole thing soulful? How do we bake it in, weave it into the DNA of the organization so that it's not based on the really good leaders, the really good soulful leaders we've uncovered and the teams we've built, but how does it live on? And how does it, as W. Edward Deming says, a bad system can beat a good person every time, but I think the converse of that is, can we create a good system that can absorb bad people every time, right? It can't be the luck of the draw. Like, did we just have the perfect hiring practice because one bad egg is gonna throw off the whole system? No, our system is solid, our system is soulful, regardless of who comes through it. What isn't the answer? The answer is not another framework. The answer is not another certification. Unless I'm selling it to you, then it's a good answer. But in general, like, we think that we can just get another framework. It's gonna be the silver bullet. It's gonna help us be soulful and happy. And if we're not happy in our workplace, what is the whole point, right? Are we suffering for our customers? Are we suffering for our shareholders? No, we are there for ourselves as well. So we need soulfulness, and a framework's not gonna be your salvation. Neither is another certification. So I'm gonna give you a little tool here. When I think about Agile, the soulful organization, there's a quick little process I can give you. If you look at some of your soul-crushing processes, what's a soul-crushing process? Budget planning, performance reviews. Dare I say your daily stand-up is soulless? Is crushing people's souls? Sometimes we have Agile practices that have become soulless. I'm sorry to say it. But here's what you can do. You don't have to throw it away. You look at it and see if you can bring it to life. Bring it back to life. So first thing to ask yourself is, well, what makes it soul-crushing? What is so soul-crushing about budget planning? Why? Is it because we're pitted against our peers? Is it because it takes forever? Is it because we know that it's going to get cut, it's going to get a haircut later, so we have to buffer it up so much? Is it, I don't know, a lot of things. Is it because our whole way, our self-worth is being challenged? There's a lot of soul-crushing stuff about budget planning. But what was the soulful purpose of it in the first place, right? We didn't put budget planning in there to crush everyone's soul. We put it in there so that we can allocate the resources in an optimal way so that the company can flourish. There is a reason. Can we get back to it? And then the third step, it's really simple here, is what would it take to bring soul back into the process? You don't have to redo it. You don't have to throw everything out. You just need to inject it with a little soul. And that's where you use your magic wand analogy. If I had a magic wand, how could budget planning be better? Well, it's impossible because finance, Okay, well, we're not just solving the problems we know how to solve. We're solving the problems that need to be solved. So take your magic wand and figure out how to bring a little soul in. And you can do this with big things like budget planning, but you can do it with a small thing. I said daily stand-up before, but even any kind of meeting. Think about your most soulless meeting, your most soul-crushing meeting that you have. I brought soulfulness to quarterly business review, the dullest, most soul-crushing meeting in corporate America. But I had music, and we had some themes. We had themes around it. And everybody thought my quarterly business review was the best one ever and the most fun. Why? Why shouldn't it be? Why not? We still showed the numbers. We still showed all the boring numbers everybody else did. We just made it fun. So that is one way that you can bring some soulfulness to your organization at the organization level. All right. And weave it right into the organization, right? You want to weave those practices in as mechanisms. Okay, so how can Agilists do this? What can we do as Agilists? We talked a little bit about our role in creating soulful organizations. So those mechanisms that we built, governance, some of the Scrum practices, DevOps practices, leadership practices, all of those can be used in a soulful way. Okay, so the title of the talk was The Soul of Agile. So we talked a little bit about it, but let's hit the nail on the head here. Has Agile lost its soul? I heard this a little bit. Yeah, I know there's a whole bunch of posts on LinkedIn about this. It doesn't say soul, but it's alluding to it. So I don't think so, but I think we might need to think about this. This is the elephant in the room. That's why I have the elephant up there. Is what is happening with the Agile soul and how can we bring it back in? Where's our place in all this? So what I want you to do is take a minute at your tables, again, a couple of minutes, and just talk about how we can bring more soulfulness to Agile or through Agile, based on all the stuff we just talked about. So I'm gonna give you hardly any time, 3 minutes. I'll give you another Slido, and you can enter in how to bring some soulfulness to your team. Take a look if you haven't seen. I see a lot of creativity, bringing creativity to the stand-up. I saw meeting people where they are, which we all say that. Did we do it?
What are the 3 steps that we do that we should get rid of and tear down?
Stop saying Agile. War puns. Trivia before Scrum. Taking the dangerous animals of product management. That sounds like an afternoon session. Okay, good job. So there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways that we can bring more soulfulness to Agile. And I think that connecting the soulful and practical is basically the space that we work in. So we're the perfect people to do it. All right. And Agilists, I wrote this book about transformational leadership. And where I talk about transformational leaders, I think Agilists are the same, right? I think there's a big overlap in the Venn diagram. And what I say is that transformational leaders are part spiritual leader, soulful leader, I didn't have that word back then, part work manager, part inspirer, and part community builder. And that's what we need for soulful organizations, people that are trained in these things the way we are. Now, what I ask of you after this talk, what I'd love for you to take away from this, is moving soulfulness from being implicit part of our job as Agilists to being more explicit. Because for years, I always coached teams and I snuck a little soulfulness in there. I didn't tell them. They really were buying business results, but I snuck the soulfulness in. It was sort of like, they wanted to get the burger and I was just giving them a side of fries with it. But now I'm making that soulfulness the burger. Why can't it be the main course? I think that needs to be front and center, and I think it's time for that. So as Agilists, I want you to see if you can pull that soulfulness to be more front and center in our work than kind of how we usually sneak it in. So today we talked about the soulful leader, the soulful team, the soulful organization. Hey, and maybe it'll be like the soulful agilist. Maybe we can add that in there. So bringing a soulful lens, so looking through that soulful lens at our work, here's some things we can do. Attend to those 3 conditions we talked about: dignity, creativity, and connection. Introduce soulful language into your workplace. Work with your soulful leaders, help develop self-awareness. Work with your soulful teams, help heal their pain. And then soulful organizations, I gave you the tool with the 3 steps to soul. So I'm just gonna leave you with one thing. I'll tell you a story about a client. When I first started working with Agile teams, and I was really just an apprentice coach. I wasn't even the coach. But they really just wanted business results. That's all they cared about. That's all anyone cares about. But I snuck in some soulfulness, even as an apprentice coach, without them realizing it. They got the side of fries. So one day as I was leaving the office, I held the elevator because I saw Frank running up. Frank was a COBOL programmer who worked on this Agile team. And he was carrying with him one of these big trophies. You recognize these trophies? And his name was embossed on it in some kind of silver. And I was like, hey, congratulations, Frank. Good job on the team. We saw a lot of success. And Frank said, yeah, we did see a lot of success on this team, unprecedented for this company, as a matter of fact. But then he looked at me and he paused, and he said something I'll never forget. He looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, but that's not why this team was so important to me. This team changed my life, because I used to come into this building every day, sit in my cubicle. I didn't even know the people that sat around me. I ate lunch in my office every day. But being on this team, now I have friends. I have camaraderie. I'm connected to the people I work with. And I have someone to eat lunch with, he said. That's amazing. And that is worth more than any trophy. Frank found soul at work, and you can too. I'm Jardena London. Thank you so much for your time.